Today we're going to be talking about verse 30 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu. In verses 23 to 26, Bhagavan was talking about ego, and about the ego rising, coming into existence. And but if it investigates itself, it will cease to exist. So in those four verses, and also in earlier verses, he was making reference to the practice of self-investigation. But from verses 27 to 29, he's specifically talking about, he's describing the practice in more detail. And in verse 30, he describes what happens as a result of the practice. What happens, even say it happens is not quite correct, but we'll discuss that a little bit more later. In verses 20, whereas in earlier verses, Bhagavan was talking about investigating the ego, in verses 27 and 28, describing the same practice, rather than describing it as just investigating ego, he describes it as investigating the place where ego rises. Obviously, when he uses that, when he says investigating the place where ego rises, he's using the word place there in a metaphorical sense. It's not a physical place where I rises. The place where I rises means that from which I rises. From what does I rise? From what does ego rise? It can rise only from ourselves. So when Bhagavan talks about the place where I rises, he's not talking about a physical place, but about the that from which I rises. From where does I rise? That is, from where does ego rise? It rises only from ourself. It rises in waking and dream. It subsides in sleep. What remains when it subsides, that is the place from which it rises. What remains when it subsides is only ourself as the pure awareness, the fundamental awareness I am, that we actually are. That is all that remains in sleep. So it is from that ego rises. So that is what Bhagavan metaphorically refers to as the place where ego rises. In verse 30, that place he refers to as the heart. So what he says in verse 30, in the first sentence, he says, nāṇāinam maṇam nāḍi uḻam ṇaṇnavē nāṇām avaṉ talai nāṇamuṛa nāṇāṇāha oṉḍṟu tāṇāha. That final clause in the normal order would be oṇḍṟu tāṇāha oṇḍṟu tāṇāha nāṇāṇā tōṉḍṟum. But in poetry, often the normal order of words is not followed in poetry. That's why sometimes, in order to interpret a verse, we have to rearrange the words to make it clearer. So what this sentence means, the first clause, nāṇāinam maṇam nāḍi, that is the mind investigating within, or inwardly investigating, nāṇā. Nāṇā means who am I? So the mind investigating who am I, uḻam ṇaṇnavē. As soon as it reaches the heart, and as soon as the mind reaches the heart, inwardly investigating who am I, that implies by inwardly investigating who am I. And the heart here, as I say, what he referred to in the earlier verses as the place from which I rises. That's the pure awareness, pure self-awareness I am. That's our real nature. That is the heart, that is the place from which ego rises. So as soon as the mind reaches the heart, inwardly investigating who am I, what happens then? Nāṇām avaṉ talai nāṇamuṛa. When he who is I dies, is what it literally, well, nāṇamuṛa, talai nāṇamuṛa, talai means head, nāṇam means shame. So when so literally implies he who is I, bending its head in shame. But bending it, that's also a metaphorical way of saying when it dies. What he refers to as nāṇam avaṉ, he who is I, is ego. So when ego dies, as soon as the mind reaches the heart by inwardly investigating who am I, ego dies. When it dies, then the main clause is oṉṭṛu tāṇāha nāṇā tōṇḍṛum. One thing appears spontaneously as nāṇān. This phrase, nān means I. So nāṇān, very literally it means I. But it actually means I am I. Because in Tamil, if you want to say, I am this body, you don't, the am is not necessary. You just say, nanit deham. The copula, that's the verb, is not necessary. It's understood there. That's very common in Tamil sentences, to drop the copula. The copula in this case means the verb to be. So nāṇān, which, as I say, in so many English books, it's been translated as I, which really doesn't mean anything. What Bhagavan means by nāṇān is I am I. The reason he says that one thing appears as I am I is to distinguish it from ego. Ego always rises as I am this. The nature of ego is to identify itself with this body. So it always experiences itself as I am this body. But I cannot be anything other than myself. So I cannot be anything other than I. The body is something other than I, because the body is something that appears and disappears. Whereas we remain, whether the body appears as in waking and dream, or it disappears as in sleep, we remain. So this body is something other than I. So I cannot be anything other than itself. I cannot be the body. So what is I? I am I. That is, I am only I am, nothing other than myself. Is what Bonbon means there. That is the pure awareness I am, is what he means by this term nāṇān. It's a very significant term that he often uses, but the reason he uses it is obscured by the mistranslation of it as I am I. That the nāṇā means I am I, to distinguish it from nānidu, which means I am this. The first Tamil commentary, or the first decent Tamil commentary on good Tamil commentary on Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu was written by Lakshman Sharma, who had the great good fortune of having Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu explained to him by Bhagavan many times. Because soon after he first came to Bhagavan, Bhagavan asked him, have you read Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu? And he said, the Tamil is too difficult for me. Because in those days, the education system was such, but all children had to take in Indian schools, they had to take English and one other language. That other language could either be their native language or it could be Sanskrit. And generally, Brahmins opted to study Sanskrit, whereas non-Brahmins would opt to study their local language. In the case of people in what is now Tamil Nadu, they would choose to study Tamil. So because Lakshman Sharma was a Brahmin, he had opted to study Sanskrit. So he didn't have, he wasn't, though he was a Tamilian, though he spoke and understood Tamil fluently, literally Tamil, he had difficulty understanding. There were some exceptions traditions. Like Murugan was also a Brahmin, but he had a love of Sanskrit, so a love of Tamil. So he chose to study Tamil. Tamil was his main language. He also studied Sanskrit. He also had a reasonable knowledge of Sanskrit, but because of his love of the Tamil language, that was his main subject. But the majority of Brahmins opted to study Sanskrit, and others opted to study Tamil. So that was the reason why Lakshman Sharma had difficulty understanding a text like Uڵļadu Nāṛpadu, which is written in it's classical Tamil poetry, in the style of classical Tamil poetry. So when Bonbon asked him, have you read Uڵļadu Nāṛpadu? He said, no, I'm not able to understand the Tamil. But then he thought this is a very good opportunity. So he said, but if Bonbon would be kind enough to teach me, I would like to study it. So then he started studying Uڵļadu Nāṛpadu under the guidance of Bhagavan. So Bhagavan was explaining to him the meaning of each verse. And because he had a liking for Sanskrit, he wanted to try and translate it into Sanskrit verse. First he asked Bhagavan to do so. Bhagavan declined, so then he started trying to translate it. And each time he completed translating it, he would go back and revise it. And so many times he went through it again and again with Bhagavan. So he was in a very good position to understand. His commentary isn't correct in all places, but by and large, his commentary is much more accurate than any other commentary that was written in Bhagavan's lifetime. And he, in his commentary, he very clearly points out this distinction between I am I and I am this. But recently, an English translation of his Tamil commentary has been published by the ashram. The translator, even though it's so clear that in what Lakshman Sharma has written, that he's drawing this contrast between I am I and I am this, the translator follows all the previous translations and translates nāṇā as I. So the meaning that Lakshman Sharma was trying to highlight, the meaning that Bhagavan had explained to him, is lost in the English translation. But it's very important to understand wherever we see in English books, I-I, the Bhagavan had said I, whether it's in books like talks or whether it's in any of Bhagavan's written work, what Bhagavan means is I am I. That is, I am only I am nothing other than I. So the one thing that appears spontaneously as I am I is of course nothing other than the heart. So when the mind reaches the heart by inwardly investigating who am I, or as soon as the mind reaches the heart by inwardly investigating who am I, and when thereby the ego dies, one thing appears spontaneously as I am I. The word spontaneously is, in Tamil, it's tāṇāha. Tāṇāha can mean either spontaneously or as oneself. Both meanings are appropriate here. And what he refers to as oṉḍṟu. Oṉḍṟu is a noun meaning one. One in the sense of one thing or the one. We can take it either way. But what is that one? As I say, it's nothing but the heart. So the implication is when the mind reaches the heart appears spontaneously as I am I. The heart here means our real nature. So when the mind, by turning within, and when the mind subsides and merges back into its source, its source, which is our real nature, appears spontaneously. That is, till the awareness I am is all, we all clearly experience I am. None of us is not aware of I am. There's never a moment when we're not aware of I am, but because we are now aware of ourselves as I am this, I am Michael, I am this body, or whatever, that obscures the real nature of I. That obscures our real nature. So when ego, this mixed awareness, I am this body, dies, when it's eradicated, that one thing appears spontaneously. This is a bit like saying that when the clouds are when the clouds are blown away by the wind, the sun appears spontaneously. Actually, the sun is there all the time. It's the light of the sun that was illumining the clouds. So the sun was never really hidden, but it seemed to be hidden by the presence of the clouds. So also, the pure awareness that we actually are is never actually concealed from our view, but it seems to be concealed because of mistaking ourselves to be this body. That which mistakes itself to be this body is ego. So when ego dies, the body and world, everything else disappears. And so that's like the clouds being blown away, exposing the sun. So Bhagavan says that one thing, our real nature, appears spontaneously as I am I. That is, we will no longer be aware of ourselves as I am this or I am that. We will be aware of ourselves just as I. That is the implication there. In the Kalivemba version, Bhagavan extended this first sentence by adding at the beginning of it 3 words. Adanal mi mure. Those words can mean either therefore in the above manner, or therefore in the lofty, superior, or exalted manner. Because the word me means height, elevation, eminence, loftiness, greatness. It can also mean it can also mean top. So since it's used here as an adjective, it can mean top, above, lofty, superior, or exalted. If we interpret it as above, as it's usually interpreted, it refers to investigating the source from which we rise as ego, as described in the previous 3 verses. Or if it's interpreted as lofty, superior, or exalted, it implies that such investigation is the exalted means to eradicate ego, because it's the only direct means to do so. So, along with this, with these 3 words, the whole of this sentence reads, that is in the Kalivem extension of this sentence is, Adanal mi murei nāṇā enna maṇam uڵļadu ṇāṛpadu nāṇām avaṉ talai nāṇamuṟa nāṇā tōṉḍṟum oṉḍṛu tāṇāha. That means, therefore, as soon as the mind reaches the heart by inwardly investigating who am I in the above exalted manner, that we can take either above or exalted, when he who is I, namely ego, dies, one thing appears spontaneously as I am I. Then, as I said, though Bhagavan says that that one thing appears spontaneously, it doesn't. That implies that it wasn't appearing previously. Actually, it always appears. There's never a moment when our fundamental awareness, I am, which is our real nature, there's not a moment when it is not shining, when it is not appearing. But because it's seemingly clouded over by ego, which is aware of itself as I am this body, when ego dies, it appears spontaneously, he says. But in the next sentence, to make it clear that this is not actually appearing, he says, tōṇḍṛiṇum nāṇaṇdru. That means, though it appears, it is not I. That implies, though it appears, it is not ego. Because the I that appears and disappears, that rises and subsides, is ego. As ego, we appear in waking and dream, we disappear in sleep. So that is the appearing and disappearing, or rising and subsiding I. That is not the I that he's referring to here. So he's indicating here that though it can be said to seem to appear, it's only like the sun seems to appear when the clouds are blown away. The sun was always there. The sun was always illumining. I mean, nothing would be visible if it wasn't for the presence of the sun, not even the clouds. So the clouds are not actually concealing the sun, though they seem to conceal it. But the sun shines with a fresh clarity when the clouds are blown away. So also the self, what we are always aware of as I, that shines with a fresh clarity when ego dies. And then in the final sentence, he says what this one thing is. poruḻ-pūṇḍṛamadu, tāṉām poruḻ. That means it is the entire substance, the substance that is oneself. Poruḻ is a word that can mean a thing or substance or reality. It's the Tamil equivalent of the Sanskrit word vastu. So if you have gold ornaments, for example, the vastu, the poruḻ, is the gold. The form, the shapes of the different ornaments, the rings and the necklaces and things, that's the form, not the substance. The substance is gold. So the poruḻ is the gold. So that which appears as I am I, that is the entire substance, the whole substance. Pūṇḍṛam is a Tamil equivalent, well, it's a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word purna. So poruḻ-pūṇḍṛam means the purna vastu, that whole reality, that infinite substance, that which, other than which nothing else exists. Just like gold ornaments don't exist other than gold, all phenomena and the perceiver of those phenomena, namely ourselves as ego, none of these things exist as other than the pure awareness that we actually are. Because that pure awareness is the one substance. It is that one substance that appears as all these things. Just like the substance of the snake is a rope, the illusory snake is not actually a snake, it's only a rope. So the substance, the poruḻ, the vastu, is only a rope. So Bhagavan describes it as poruḻ-pūṇḍṛam. That means the purna vastu, or whole reality, or entire substance. Adu means that, it. Tāṇām poruḻ, the poruḻ, the substance, or the vastu, or the reality, that is oneself. Tāṇām. The wording of this sentence is somewhat related to the wording of verse 7 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu. So it can be quite useful to read these two verses together, because in verse 7, what he said is Uḷľu arivum oṇḍṛai uditu odungum enum uḷľu arivu tannal olirum. Here, arivu means awareness, but what he's talking about the awareness that arises and subsides. So what is the awareness that arises and subsides? It's not real awareness, it's only ego, the perceiver of the world. So though the world and that awareness, that ego, arise and subside together, the world shines by awareness. It's only the ego, the awareness, the ego which is aware of the world, that is what illumines it. Why? Because the the world appears only in the view of ego. So it's only by the ego that the world shines. So there he talks about the world and arivu, the ego, appearing and arising and subsiding. In the next sentence, he says, "Uḻḷadu Nāṛpadu tōṉḍṛimaredakku idanai tōṉḍṛimareyadu olirum pūṇḍṛamadu poruḻ." That means only that which shines without appearing or disappearing. In the first sentence, he referred to the world and ego as arising and subsiding. Arising and subsiding is just another way of saying appearing and disappearing. So only that which shines without appearing or disappearing, as the place. Place there means, it can mean the location, the site, or the ground, or the space in which these appear, as the place for the appearing and disappearing of the world and awareness. Awareness here means ego again. Is poruḻ, the substance, pūṇḍṛamam, which is the whole. So he's using the same words, pūṇḍṛam and poruḻ here, and he says it shines without appearing or disappearing. But here in verse 30, he says it appears. It appears as I, spontaneously. So there's a seeming contradiction here. So to emphasize that it's not an actual appearance, but only a semi-appearance, here in verse 30, he says in the second sentence, tōṇḍṛiṇum nāṇāṉu. Though it appears, it is not I, it is not ego. So the I that appears and disappears is only ego, that which is aware of the world. So the ego appears along with the world and it disappears along with the world. And it's only by ego, it's only in the view of ego that the world appears. Without ego, there is no world. There's no one to see any world. And the world has no existence independent of our perception of it. So, so that is the I that really appears and disappears. But as I explained earlier, when this I is removed, just like the clouds being blown aside, the sun seems to appear. Or if we look very closely at what seems to be a snake, when we see it as a rope, the rope suddenly appears. Does a rope appear? What we were looking at was only the rope. But it just seemed to us to be a snake. So long as it seemed to us to be a snake, it's what it is, it was concealed. So when we recognize, oh, it's only a rope, the rope, metaphorically speaking, it appears. That is, we come to realize what it actually is. So that's what Bonbon means in this sentence when he says that the one reality appears appears spontaneously as I am I. That is, it suddenly becomes clear to us what we actually are. Now, there's never a moment when we are not aware that I am, but so long as we are aware of ourselves as I am this person, I am this body, I am Michael, or I am Kumar, or whoever, so long as we are aware of ourselves thus, though we are aware that we are not aware of what we are, because we mistake ourselves to be something other than what we are. So we are not aware of ourselves as we actually are. So what Bonbon refers to as that one appearing spontaneously as I am I is our becoming aware of ourselves as we actually are. It's not a new awareness. There's nothing new we learn. It's, as Bhagavan said, jnana is nothing new to be gained. All we need to remove is remove the ignorance, and what remains is jnana. Even the ignorance, the ajnana, cannot exist independent of the jnana, the fundamental awareness that we actually are, as he says in verse 13. So remove this ajnana, and what then appears is what is always appearing, what is always shining. That is the pure awareness that we actually are. but it appears with a fresh clarity because we see what it actually is. That is, we were always looking only at the rope, but so long as it seemed to us to be a snake, the fact that it was a rope was not clear to us. When we finally recognize, oh, it's only a rope, then it seems to shine, the rope seems to appear. Actually, it just becomes clear what it actually is. It hasn't actually appeared or disappeared. It's remained exactly as it is. Likewise, our real nature doesn't actually appear, but it seems to become clear to us when ego dies. But as soon as it becomes clear, then we recognize it as what is natural. When we first recognized it was a snake, it seems to be some new knowledge we've gained. But very quickly we understand, oh, we were seeing a rope all along. We just mistook it to be. So it's not actually anything new. That is when that is what Bonbon called the appearance of that ourself as we actually are. That is what Bonbon calls spurana or spuripu, the fresh shining, the fresh clarity of shining, or shining with fresh clarity. When we recognize it, oh, this is what I always am, then that is what he describes sometimes as the subsidence of spurana, and when spurana subsides, that is when the newness of the freshness of the clarity of self-awareness, when we recognize it as, oh, this is what I always was, then it becomes sahaja. Of course, we shouldn't take these words spurana and we shouldn't take and this appearing. We shouldn't take them too. Spurana means more or less the same, or the verb of the spurana is a noun derived from a verb spur, which Bhagavan actually uses in verse 20 of Upadeshasaram, where in the same place where he talks about exactly the same as in this verse, he talks about it. He talks about that one thing appearing as I am I. He uses the same tōṇḍṟiṉunum there in the Tamil version. In the Sanskrit version, he uses the verb spur, from which the noun spurana is derived. So though the verb spur means to shine or to become clear. So it's that fresh clarity of self-awareness that Bhagavan refers to as spurana. In some contexts, when he talks about spurana, he's talking about the fresh clarity that we experience during practice. But in some cases, when he talks about spurana, he's talking about the full clarity that shines, that becomes clear, the full clarity that remains when ego subsides. And at first that seems new. It's called spurana. When it's new, when it becomes clear, but it's not new. It's what is always present. Then it becomes sahaja. But all these things, there's no time. There's no time involved because time appears only with ego. So when ego subsides, it's appearing as a fresh clarity, and its recognition as what is sahaja, what is ever present, what is natural. These all happen instantaneously. It's not but first the spurana appears, and then after some time it subsides and sahaja remains. It shines forth and is immediately recognized as sahaja, because what is aware of that shining forth is not ego, because ego has died. What is aware of that shining forth is only our real nature. And in the view of our real nature, we've always been aware of ourselves as we actually are. So it's what Bhagavan is talking about here is something very, very subtle, but can't be adequately expressed in words. He's giving us an indication. But if we want a full clarity of what Bhagavan means in this verse where he describes it like this, and in verse 20 of Upadeshasaram where he describes it in a very similar way, and also in Anmavidya, in Atmavidya Kirtanam, a song of self-knowledge, in verse, I think it may be 2 or 3, I can't remember which verse it was now. He there also, he talks about nāṇā. I think it's verse 2. Yes, it's in verse 2 of Anmavidya, he describes it in very much the same way. And in this verse 2, he very clearly distinguishes between between ego, which he describes as uṇā, uḷļadu Nāṛpadu, nāṇām, nāṇavē. That is the thought called I am this body of flesh. I am this fleshy body. So that is ego. Ego is that which is aware of itself as I am this body. And when ego is destroyed by self-investigation, what then appears spontaneously as I am I, that is our real nature. So Bhagavan is very, very clearly distinguished between I am this, which is ego, and I am I, which is what we actually are. So yeah, I think I've now explained this in sufficient detail. So if any of you would like to ask any questions either about this or about anything else.
So there may be some mild echo, which is unmuted it.
Yes.
So once we muted it, the echo stopped. So coming back, I had this question. You beautifully explained a nāṇā, that that I just really. Bhagavan is referring to I am that I, so the real I, not the body sense. And how does, just sort of correlate, how does this, how is it similar or different from the biblical quote of the Ehiya Ashre?
Right. Bhagavan often used to refer to what God said to Moses when God appeared as a fiery bush, and said to Moses to go back to Egypt and to lead his people out of Egypt, and he said something, I can't remember the exact story, but he said something, go and tell the Pharaoh to release my people. Then Moses said, who are you? Who should I say you are? And God, rather than saying I am God, he simply says I am that I am. The significance of that has been debated by biblical scholars for thousands of years, and it was generally taken among the Jews that I am was the most sacred name of God. But the full significance was only brought out by Bhagavan. What Bhagavan pointed out is what God is saying, I am nothing other than I. Whereas, because we are self-ignorant, we are aware of ourselves as I am this person. But God doesn't say I am God. He simply says I am I. That is, God is nothing other than I. And it also has another meaning. I mean, in the context, it could also be taken as meaning. God is, Moses asked God, who shall I say sent me? And God said, I am that I am. That is the I, but Moses is referring to when he says, who shall I say has sent me? That I is nothing other than God. So it's something Bhagavan always used to stress. That which is shining in us as I, that is God. It seems to be something other than God because we've limited it with adjuncts. We're now, instead of just being aware of ourselves as I am or I am I, we're now aware of ourselves as I am this. I am Michael, I am this body, or whatever. So it is this mixing of adjuncts that is whatever we refer to as I am this, or that is the body or whatever we identify ourselves with, is an adjunct. It's not what we actually are. What we actually are is only I, nothing other than I. So Bhagavan sometimes said the greatest of all the Mahavakyas is not the four Mahavakyas in the Upanishads, in the Vedas, but the Mahavakya in the Bible, because the Mahavakyas in the Vedas, Tattvamasi, you are that. But it seemed to have two things there, you and that. Actually, the purpose of that Mahavakya is to say, we take God to be that, something other than ourselves. But the Tattvamasi, that is only you, is the implication. But another one is Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. So Brahman is not aware of itself as I am Brahman, it's aware of itself only as I. So I am I is the actual experience of Brahman. So Bhagavan said that I am expresses the real nature of God more clearly than any of the Mahavakyas. Which is the greatest of the Mahavakyas, he said. But of course, all the Mahavakyas are implying the same thing, but it's just not said in such a direct way. Like Tattvamasi, it means that God or Brahman is nothing other than you. Some people misunderstand this. Among some Advaitins say that merely investigating I, that is what they refer to as Tumpada, the word I, you, that is not sufficient. You also have to investigate Tat. So you begin by investigating yourself, and then you have to go on to investigate Brahman, or vice versa. I don't know which way take us, head or tail, but they've misunderstood, because the whole point of the Mahavakya is to say you are that. If you are that, there are not two things, you and that. So investigating yourself is investigating that. But the human mind will, however clearly it is said, the human mind that is not ready to accept it as it is will misinterpret it. So that's why the Mahavakyas, Advaita, has been interpreted in so many ways. That's why it was necessary for Bhagavan to come and express the whole thing again in very simple, clear, and fresh terms. Bhagavan sometimes said, he's not teaching anything new. It's already there in the Vedas, already there, said there by sages. Bhagavan said it with so much greater clarity. And why it was necessary? Because what the sages said, for some people it may have been clear, but the majority of people have misunderstood it and have confused it. So Bhagavan came to give us the same teaching that was given in the Upanishads with a fresh clarity. If we read Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, we can understand Advaita far more clearly than if we read all the Upanishads and all the commentaries on them and the Brahma Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita. Studying all those things won't give us the same degree of clarity that we can get by studying the simple works of Bhagavan, like nāṇā, who am I, and Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. There, Bhagavan gives us the essence of the whole Advaita in very, very simple terms. But Bhagavan's teachings, though they're very simple, we can almost say they're deceptively simple, because they're actually very, very deep and subtle. So though it's very conceptually, it's very simple, to fully grasp the depth of what Bhagavan is teaching us, requires a great degree of subtlety of mind. That type of subtlety and clarity of mind to understand Bhagavan properly, that can come only from putting what he taught us into practice. The more we practice what he taught us, the clearer his teachings will become. That's much better now. Can you hear me?
Temporarily muted.
Oh.
So while we are unmuted, any questions, follow-up questions to Michael?
Yeah, I have a.
Right.
So we have come closer. And this is a related question, but this question came from my son yesterday. He's 17 years old. And he sees me practicing self-attention. And he sort of asked about the state of myself when I'm doing this practice and how it is different from sleep. He says, is it... so I tried to explain that I'm trying to be aware of my awareness itself and that my thoughts subside, and that's how far I went. And he sort of inquired that is it the same way when he's sort of dozing off in the class, fading away. So he's aware the teacher is teaching, but he's not really paying attention, he's fading away. Or is it like in deep sleep? He wakes up and sees he has a very good, it was a good sleep. And do I feel the same type of peace and happiness when I have a good self-attention session? I tried to explain him about I am and things like that, but I don't think I got to him, and it's because I don't have perfect clarity myself, except that. How would you explain if I were a father and your 17-year-old asks?
Okay. None of us have perfect clarity, because if we had perfect clarity, we wouldn't be here. So long as we're aware of ourselves as I am this person, we are lacking the perfect clarity that we require. But the difference between the practice of self-investigation and sleep, in sleep there is no ego. There is no one there to investigate anything. Because all that when in the absence of ego, what remains is only pure awareness. Whereas now, in the state of practice, we are aware of ourselves as I am this person, but we are trying to see what we actually are. So ego is still present. The investigation can be done only by ego. And what it is investigating is only itself. So it is ego investigating ego. But the more ego succeeds in turning its attention back towards itself, that is, the more its attention is withdrawn from other things and focused on itself, the more ego subsides. So in sleep, we are not aware of anything other than ourselves. But while practicing self-investigation, there is still some residual awareness. We may be aware of the body, we may be aware of an itch on our nose, or thoughts will be coming and going. Even when we are most focused on ourselves, we are still not 100% focused on ourselves. If we are 100% focused on ourselves, that is, we turned our attention a full 180 degrees away from everything else, back towards ourselves, at that moment, that clarity of I am nothing but I, that will shine forth. So we haven't yet reached that point. So, but the more we focus our attention on ourselves, the more keenly we are self-attentive, the closer we are coming to that. So we are still in waking or dream, because it's only in waking and dream that we can investigate ourselves. We are still in this state, but we are coming close to the state of sleep. But when we reach that state of sleep, that is when we turn the full 180 degrees, we are then in the state of sleep, but there is a difference. But difference is not just difference in what we experience in sleep, but a difference in how we get there. In sleep, what happens in sleep, how we sleep, is our body and mind are active throughout the day. By after being active for some 16 hours or so, we become too tired to continue thinking, too tired to continue projecting all of this. Because according to Bhagavan, this is all a dream. So it's all projected by us. That's a lot of hard work. So after 16 hours or so of projecting these things, we become so tired. So ego subsides, and after ego has subsided, what remains is pure awareness. That because the pure awareness shines forth after the subsidence of ego, ego is not thereby destroyed. It is not ego that is seeing itself as pure awareness. So after being in sleep, after recharging its batteries, ego rises up full of vigor again, and continues dreaming, projecting this dream for another 16 hours until it again gets tired. In self-investigation, we are the shining forth of self-awareness is not achieved as a result of the subsidence of ego. The subsidence of ego is achieved as a result of the shining forth of the pure self-awareness. That is, in sleep, first ego subsides, then pure self-awareness remains. In self-investigation, we are turning our attention back towards ourselves. We are trying to experience that. We, ego, are trying to experience that pure self-awareness. The moment that as ego, we experience that pure self-awareness, we cease to be ego. Ego is died. That's what Bonbon says. When he who is I dies, that is what Bonbon is referring to there. So when as ego we investigate ourselves keenly enough, that's when we turn our attention back the full 180 degrees with that eagerness to know what we actually are. As soon as we see what we actually are, we cease to be ego. So the destruction, the complete subsidence of ego is achieved by pure self-awareness, by being aware of ourself alone. Whereas in the case of sleep, ego subsides and then we're aware of ourself alone. Do you understand the distinction?
Yeah, so the follow-up question is, suppose my turning inwards is 175 degrees or 170 degrees, I don't know the quantitative measure. And then I wake up, or I stop investigating and go back to my normal egoic self. And then the question is, am I better off just having practiced? Have I, that subsidence of ego and the rising of the ego, is it of the same nature as I would from a deep sleep?
Bhagavan said, no effort made in this path will ever go in vain. Every time we try to turn our attention back towards ourselves, we are taking one small step closer to our goal. Because even if we're turning only 10 degrees, 20 degrees, to that extent, we are being attentively self-aware. At least to some extent, that is, the more we are attentively self-aware, that more our attention is focused on ourselves, the more our mind is clarified. Because what is the light that illumines the mind, enabling it to know all these things? It's only the light of pure awareness. So when we try to turn our attention back towards that light, the mind becomes clearer and clearer. As the mind becomes clearer, the discrimination, the viveka, becomes brighter. And with more viveka, then it is because of our lack of viveka, Bhagavan says in the 14th paragraph of Who Am I, because of our aviveka, that's lack of viveka, but we continue to pursue, to seek happiness in things outside ourselves. As Bhagavan has taught us, there's not an iota of happiness in any of the things of the world. And he talks about prapañca poruḻ, the things of the world, the objects of the world. But that it also applies to any phenomenon. There's not any happiness in any thought or in anything other than ourselves. But even though we've heard Bhagavan say that, even though we understand it conceptually, even though we may believe it, we're not yet fully convinced. Because if we were fully convinced, we wouldn't attend to anything other than ourselves. If we were fully convinced that we alone are happiness, we would turn our attention only to ourselves. We wouldn't be bothered about attending to anything else. So our desires and attachments arise because of our lack of discrimination. But because of our lack of discrimination, it seems to us that we derive happiness from things other than ourselves. So we have desire for those things. So we have attachment for those things. So we have likes and dislikes, hopes and fears, all these passions come into existence because of our lack of viveka, which means lack of clarity. So the more we practice this self-investigation, the more clarity dawns in our mind. The more clarity dawns, the more our desires and attachments will diminish on the one hand, and proportionate to that, the more our love to be as we actually are will increase. So every little effort we make in this path, we are getting closer to that. Our desires and attachments are losing their hold on us, or they're becoming weaker, and our love to know ourselves is becoming stronger. It may seem to us, but we've been practicing this for many years, we're no better than we were. But Bhagavan has assured us not even the smallest effort you make will go in vain. And why so many years of practice are necessary? Because our desires and attachments are so strong. We have so accustomed ourselves to seeking happiness in things other than ourselves. We so firmly believe, in spite of all that Bhagavan tells us, yes, I like chocolate, and when I eat chocolate, it makes me feel good. We're constantly seeking pleasure in things other than ourselves. Maybe sensual pleasures like eating chocolate or watching beautiful sunset or watching movies or watching football or whatever it is. Or it may be intellectual pleasures, the pleasures of thinking about philosophy or thinking about science or whatever it is. There's so many ways we are seeking pleasure in things other than ourselves. But, so why we seek pleasure in, because we have desire for these things. If I have desire to know more about the universe, and I become an astrophysicist, I'll be getting very excited about all my latest discoveries and anticipating new discoveries. So I get pleasure from that. But where is that pleasure coming from? I think the pleasure is coming from this knowledge I'm gaining. But actually the pleasure is coming only from within myself. Like Bonbon used to give the analogy of the dog that went to a cremation ground. The dog is very hungry, so it's looking for a nice bone. If it can find a fresh bone, it will be full of juice and it would have some nourishment. But in the cremation ground, there aren't any bones like that. They're all brittle old bones, dry, brittle bones. So it finds one bone, it picks it up, it starts chewing on it. And because it's a brittle old dry bone, it starts splintering. And the splinters cause cuts in its mouth. And because the cut, blood comes in, the blood is on the bone. So after chewing the bone for some time, unmindful of all the pain in its mouth, it drops the bone and says, ah, what a beautiful, tasty bone this is. So much juicy blood in it. It licks the blood and goes on chewing. So also, as foolish as that dog, we are so foolish, seeking pleasure in things outside ourselves. With all the pleasure we derive we seem to derive from those things, whether sensual pleasures or intellectual pleasures or whatever type of pleasures they are, the happiness is coming only from within ourselves. It's because of our desire for these other things. When we get what we desire, our desire is satisfied. Our mind is pacified. The more the mind is pacified, the happiness that within shines forth. But having licked the bone, we want to go on chewing more and more. So having achieved the latest discovery in science, we want to go on discovering more and more, or whatever it is.
I hope I will be able to play this hearing device.
That's what I was thinking, right.
Muting and unmuting. I hope Bonbon will take care of that. But thank you again for beautifully connecting the dots again and again in different contexts, so that our resolve and also understanding is enhanced and strengthened resolve. It's a segue to my next question. I heard in one of your recent lectures to the London devotees that you made this comment that physical pain is also a thought, and we suffer because we dislike the thoughts. You're talking about likes and dislikes, and that's something new to me. And tell me more, because I suffer from some physical pains from time to time. And although I have seen that if you take your attention from the pain, especially in deep sleep, there is no pain, right? And it comes right back. But be that as it may, but the fact that if you stop disliking the thoughts, the intensity of pain or the pain will not cause you suffer. Maybe you can tell me more about that.
When Bhagavan had cancer, the cancer he had was sarcoma, which is a type of cancer that grows on the nerve. So it was excruciatingly painful. Bhagavan was unconcerned about that pain. When people asked him, Bhagavan, are you not feeling pain? Bhagavan said, yes, there is pain, but that pain is not other than me. So because he had no likes or dislikes, the pain was a physical sensation. Certain physical sensations we like sight gives they're physical sensations. All our sensory perceptions, they're all physical sensations. Some of them some sights we find beautiful, some sights we find ugly, some tastes we find very pleasant, some tastes we find very unpleasant. Some smells we find pleasant, some other smells we find unpleasant. All this, what is determining what is pleasant or unpleasant is our likes and our dislikes. If we have no likes and dislikes, there's no pleasant or unpleasant. So the all happiness and misery is caused only by our likes and dislikes. So if we could be free of likes and dislikes, we would be free of all suffering. But how to be free of likes and dislikes is, so long as we rise as ego, it's our very nature to have likes and dislikes. Because as ego, we take this body to be ourselves. So because the first and most fundamental thing we all feel is that desire to survive in this body. Because this body is I don't want to die. So that self-preservation. And because this body is I not only want to live as long as possible in this body, I want to live as comfortably as possible. I don't want to be homeless. I don't want to be out on the streets in the cold. I don't want to be hungry. I don't want to not have a comfortable bed to sleep on. I don't want to have insufficient clothing to protect me from the cold, or shelter to protect me from the heat. we care so much about the comforts and conveniences of this body. Why? Because this body is I. We want to survive in this body and we want to be comfortable in this body. Why we take things like, why we take excessive heat, why we have a dislike for excessive heat or a dislike for excessive cold? Because these are threatening our very survival. If we're in the middle of a desert with no water, exposed to the sun, we'll very quickly die. If we're exposed in the Arctic without adequate clothing, we'll very quickly die. So we dislike heat, we dislike cold, like that. All our likes and dislikes, ultimately, we dislike being hungry. Why? Because if we don't eat enough, we're going to die. So we desire food. So we don't like being suffocated. One of the strongest desires we have is for air, for breath. We take it for granted because most of the time we're breathing easily. But if we fall underwater and are drowning, then we panic. Or if we are enclosed in some space without sufficient air and we're getting asphyxiated, we panic. We so much desire we have for that. So all our likes and dislikes are centered around the preservation of this body, because we experience this body as I. So long as we rise as ego and therefore experience a body as I, we cannot be totally free of likes and dislikes. We can diminish our likes and dislikes by following this path of self-investigation and self-surrender. We cannot get rid of them entirely so long as we exist as ego. So who has likes and dislikes? I do. That's I, this ego. So the only way to get rid of all our likes and dislikes entirely is to get rid of ego, that which has all these likes and dislikes. That's why surrender cannot be complete without surrendering ego. We can surrender everything else. We can, or at least to a great extent, we can surrender all our likes, our dislikes. We can bear any amount of hardship. We can say, I'm completely surrendered to the will of God. We will still have likes and dislikes. They'll still be lurking there. Maybe they'll be less strong, but they'll still be lurking there until we cut at their root, which is this I. So surrender is complete only when it's self-surrender. Not surrendering what is mine, but surrendering I. And how to surrender what is I? I is ego. What is ego? Ego is nothing but the false awareness, I am this person. I am this body. I am so-and-so. I am Michael. That is ego. So in other words, ego is a false self-awareness, an awareness of ourself as something other than what we actually are. Since ego is a false self-awareness, how can it be destroyed? The snake, the illusory snake, is just a misperception. How to kill that snake? You cannot kill it by beating it. There's only one way to kill it is to see that it's only a rope. When you see it's a rope, the snake is finished. Likewise, in order to destroy ego, in order we need to see what we actually are. So we cannot surrender ourselves entirely without self-investigation. Self-surrender is the pinnacle of the path of bhakti. Self-investigation is the pinnacle of the path of surrender. So self-investigation is the ultimate path of bhakti. It's where all bhakti leads to, is self-investigation. Because where is God? He's not somewhere outside, he's within us. I mean, we can explain it in so many ways. We can say either we've got to surrender ego, or we've got to know God. We have to turn within. There's no other way. Other means may help to purify the mind to some extent, but ultimately, we have to come to this path of self-investigation. Only by self-investigation can we destroy ego.
Michael, another question is that a Jivan Mukta, like Bhagavan, who is a jnani living in the body, do they achieve this total freedom from pain, given that pain is a self-preservation mechanism for the physical body? I mean, do they have a self-preservation instinct?
Wait a second, sorry. The answer to that is, I think the answer to that is the verse we're going to be talking about next month.
Okay.
Because in that verse, Bhagavan says, they do not know or are not aware of anything other than themselves. So who can or how to conceive their state as it is like this? So none of us can understand Bhagavan's state. We can understand a little what it is not.
Okay.
But we cannot talk about it without exposing our ignorance. You say, Vijnani is living in the body. Bhagavan would answer to that is, in whose view is Vijnani living in the body?
In my dream.
In your view, Jnani is nothing. Bhagavan said, ṇāṇamē jnani. Jnana alone is Vijnani. Jnana means pure self-awareness. So it said, the knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. Bhagavan said, it's not even a matter of becoming. The knower of Brahman is Brahman. Because only Brahman can know itself.
Right.
So Brahman doesn't live in a body. The body and the world, everything appears in Brahman. Well, it appears in the mind, which appears in Brahman. So Bhagavan, in our view, it seems that Bhagavan, who is nothing but our own pure awareness, our own real nature, has appeared outwardly in the form of Bhagavan. That's in our view. But in his view, he's not undergone any change. And he appears outwardly. Why? Because he is infinite love. Because he loves him. Bhagavan loves only one thing. He loves himself. But because he sees nothing as other than himself, he loves everything as himself. So he loves us as himself. And what is Bhagavan's desire? What does Bhagavan want? Bhagavan wants only one thing, to be happy. So because he sees us not other than himself, he wants us to be happy. But he knows that we're not going to get happiness from any of these things of the world. So his love for us manifests outwardly in the form of Bhagavan to tell us to turn within. But we take that Bhagavan, that person, Ramana Maharshi, we think, oh, that is Bhagavan. That is not Bhagavan. Well, it is Bhagavan in a sense, but he has appeared in that form, but that is not what he actually is.
Thank you.
What he actually, so we cannot, anything we ask about the state of Vijnani, the state of Vijnani is Vijnani, and Vijnani is jnana. So nothing more can be said about it than that. Whatever we try to understand about the state, we will fall short. Because in our view, jnani is someone other than ourselves. Whereas in the view of jnani, there is no other. So jnani is nothing but that poruḻ-pūṇḍṛamam poruḻ, the infinite reality. That we actually are the one true substance. So he's nothing other than ourselves.
Michael, so we have Anil here. He has a question. He actually he is looking at Ramanopa's Nūṇmālai, the English translation.
Yes.
And he is looking at page 12. And so he had a question, and I'm going to just ask him to read it and then ask what his question is.
In this second paragraph on page 12, and it's your translation, and it reads, "For us to be able to remain thus as we really are, grace is also necessary. In order to be suitable receptacle to imbibe the grace, we should be possessed of love for just being as we are. infinite happiness will then appear. Whose grace are we talking about?
Grace is what we were just talking about now. Grace is nothing but the infinite love that Bhagavan has for himself. And since he doesn't see us as other than himself, he has infinite love for us. But he doesn't have love for us as a person. He has a love for us as we actually are. So that his love for us is what we experience as grace. And that grace is what has appeared outwardly in the form of Bhagavan to tell us to turn within. But because his grace is his infinite love for us, we, in order to become a fit receptacle of his grace, we have to respond to love with love. That is, we have to love him in order to, his love for us is never diminished. He always has infinite love for us. He has love for whatever condition we are in, whether we are the worst of sinners or the greatest of saints. His love for us is unchanged. But for us to become one with that love, we have to love him.
Understand. So you're saying the Bhagavan and consciousness and awareness is all synonymous. It's all same.
They're all the same. And love and happiness are all the same. Sat Chit Ananda, Asti Bhati Priyam. Sat means what is. Chit means awareness. Ananda means happiness. That is also expressed as Asti, again, being what is. Bhati means shining. That's awareness. Priyam means love. Love and happiness are one and the same. When we rise as ego and are aware of duality, we say happiness is the cause of love. We love the things that make us happy.
Yes.
But since Bhagavan says in the first paragraph of Who Am I, because happiness alone is the cause of love, and because we have greatest love for ourselves, that means we are happiness. So Sat, Chit, Ananda, and Priyam are all one and the same thing.
I have a question. We speak about ego quite a bit today.
Yes.
But say if you have a position where you are, you know who you are, and to some extent, to a large extent, you know who you are, then in order to transact in the outside world, ego is not necessary, but you need a mind to just transact for your bare needs. You still need mind to transact.
How can you have mind without ego? Ego is the root of the mind. Ego is the mind has two parts: subject and object. All the thoughts that we are aware of, they're all phenomena. They're all objects. But mind isn't only all those thoughts. Mind also contains the subject, that which is aware of those thoughts. That subject is ego. So the perceiving element of the mind, that is ego. So without that perceiving element, there is no mind, because the mind exists only in its view.
So ego is not that bad a thing. You know, if you gotta use mind and ego, it's kind of arise together.
Yes. But Bhagavan often uses the word mind to refer to ego, because what the mind essentially is only ego. Other thoughts come and go, but one constant thought is the thought I am so-and-so, I am this body. So that is ego.
Okay, thank you.
But I haven't fully answered your question. Did you say how to function? You need the mind to function.
Yes.
Yes, you need the mind to function, but why do you need to function?
Well, how do you, okay, if this realized person who has realized who he is,
there is no person who has ever realized who he is.
Well, how does this person live?
If he's a person, he hasn't realized who he is. If he's realized who he is, he's not a person.
Right. Don't go together.
Okay, I don't have enough right words to you.
Yeah, I know, because we can't adequate, because we think in terms of a jnani is a self-realized person. We think
So
that is a contradiction in terms, because if he's a person, he's not self-realized. If he's self-realized, he's not a person.
Okay, so this jnani person who is self-realized. okay, there's no person. Here's a jnani. Jnani, like yourself.
What is it? Let's go. What is a person? When does a person? When are you a person? Now you're a person.
Jnani becomes a person when he transacts with the world.
No. Okay, let's go back to the fundamentals. Now you're aware of yourself as a person, aren't you?
Yes.
And in dream, you're aware of yourself as a person.
Yeah. Yes, the dream person knows that person. Yes.
Yes. In sleep, you're not aware of yourself as a person.
Yes.
But you're there in all three states.
Yes.
So person is something that comes and goes.
Yes.
It's a false identification. That which is aware of itself as I am this person, that is ego. What we call self-realization is nothing but destruction of the ego, nothing but destruction of that false awareness, I am this person. And when we are not aware of ourselves as a person, as in sleep, there is no world to function in. According to Bonbon, this waking state is just a dream. And the characteristic of any dream, firstly, we are aware of ourselves as a person, and that person exists in the world, so we're consequently aware of the world. So that is what Bonbon said in verse 7 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, which I referred to earlier. Though the world and the awareness of it, that's ego, ego is that which is aware of the world, though the world and ego rise and subside together, by the ego that the world shines. So when there's no ego, there is no world, no body, no person. It's only from our perspective as an ego, but we see, oh, this person who lived for 54 years in Sri Ramana and wrote Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu and answered so many questions and all this person is a jnani, we think. But according to that person who we take to be a jnani, he says, I'm not this person. So we are imposing our ignorance upon him. But everyone says, because you see yourself as a body, you see me as a body. I don't see myself as a body, so I don't see you as a body. I see you as myself.
I understand.
Nice.
So we cannot understand the state of the jnani until we lose ego, because ego distorts everything. So we cannot even frame the question properly. You were having difficulty framing the question, which is inevitable. It's not your fault. It can't be. The question cannot be adequately framed.
Yes.
The very framing of the question is based upon a basic ignorance of what a jnani is. Sometimes people ask Bhagavan whether such and such a person is a jnani. Bhagavan said, there is only one jnani. You are that. Tattvamasi. So if you want to know who is a jnani, you have to know yourself. When you know yourself, you know that you alone exist. So you are the only jnani. Why our own self appeared outwardly in the form of Bhagavan was to tell us to turn within and see the jnani within us. But we don't pay heed to Bhagavan's words. We want to see the jnani outside.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Do you have a question? Any questions? Do you have a question? Oh, God. Go ahead.
Thank you, Michael. We're taking a lot of your energy today.
That's okay.
I had the.
I thrive on this. I love this subject. So
That's great. So I had two.
This is my alcohol, my drug.
Nice. So, Michael, my question is about the practice, right? So, in the practice, do we gain some sort of pleasure or joy from practice, and does that joy or pleasure indicate that we're doing the practice in the correct way?
Yes and no. We certainly do derive not exactly pleasure. We derive calmness and satisfaction. We derive peace from this practice. But at the same time, this practice is always a struggle. Because as ego, the very nature of ourself as ego is to be aware of things other than ourselves. So when we are trying to turn our attention away from other things back towards ourselves, we are going against the very nature of ego. So we are constantly up against all our desires, attachments, and everything. There's a battle going on in our will between our desires and attachments for things other than ourselves and our love to be aware of ourselves alone. So it's never plain sailing. Until the ego is completely eradicated, it's a struggle. But the very fact that we are following this path, though we may not, generally, if we are following this path properly, we will find we will become more and more content, more and more satisfied, more and more calm, more and more peaceful, less and less perturbed by the things that would have disturbed us 10 years ago no longer seem to us to be a big deal. Slowly, slowly, our concern about our life in this world gets less and less. So in that way, and the less we are concerned about these things, the more calm, the more peaceful, the more satisfied we are. Less desires we have. The less desires we have, the happier we are. So to the extent that our Vishaya vasanas, that's our liking, our inclination to be aware of anything other than ourselves, the more those Vishaya vasanas are weakened, the happier we will be. It's not a big pleasure. I said this subject is my alcohol, but unlike alcohol, this doesn't give me a high, or it gives a deep, abiding satisfaction. That satisfaction is sukha. That is our real nature. We're not fully experiencing it fully yet. Dukkha is nothing but dissatisfaction. That's why Buddha and so many other sages have said life is nothing but dukkha. Bhagavan said when the mind comes out from self, it experiences dukkha. People say, oh no, I'm not experiencing dukkha. I'm quite content. I'm quite happy. I'm enjoying my life. But deep down, we are all experiencing dukkha, because dukkha means the opposite of sukha. Sukha is satisfaction. Dukkha is dissatisfaction. None of us are satisfied. If we were satisfied, we wouldn't have any desires. We wouldn't have any likes or dislikes. We'd be content with things just as they are. None of us are. As ego, we can never be fully satisfied. We can only be fully satisfied when we merge back in our source, which is infinite happiness. Nothing less than infinite happiness will satisfy us. And as ego, we can never experience infinite happiness, because ego is finite. How can a finite ego experience infinite happiness? So dissatisfaction is the very nature of ego. But Ramakrishna Paramahamsa also said dissatisfaction is the indication that we are Brahman. Because we are Brahman, we can never be satisfied with anything less than perfect satisfaction. But that is our real nature. So our dissatisfaction shows that we are Brahman, and we are hankering for our own real nature.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Right. Yes.
So,
Do you want to keep drinking, Michael?
okay. Okay. Question or comment?
Just a question.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Michael, earlier you were saying, you know, how we're so attached to our survival.
Yeah.
We perceive ourselves to this entity.
Yeah.
And this reminds me of, because yes, like I can go for a few seconds without air. If I close my mouth, I'm desperate for air. But I can seem to go a whole lifetime without knowing who I am. So it never seems that urgency for air is the same as the urgency for self-realization. So, and then there are all these sayings that, you know, without that urgency, without that, like a man seeks water when his head is on fire, he will never get there. But I guess in that case, then I'll just be breathing and die.
None of us yet experience that urgency. That's why we're here talking about this subject. If we were really that urgent, we wouldn't be here. When you're drowning underwater, you don't sit and talk philosophy, do you? You just want to get up and have a breath of air. So we lack that urgency. Why do we lack that urgency? Bhagavan has said, because of aviveka, because we lack the judgment to recognize that there's no happiness in any of the things of the world. Happiness lies only within us. So the more we practice this, slowly practice this path of self-investigation and self-surrender, the more the clarity will shine in our mind. The more clarity we experience, the more we will, the more we will have love to know ourselves, and the less we will have interest or desire to know, to be aware of anything else. So that urgency will grow with practice. But it doesn't come all of a sudden. Patient and persistent practice is necessary. So we're on the right road. We're still traveling a little slowly, but as we get closer to our goal, we'll be traveling faster and faster. Because the urgency will be felt. The closer we get, the more urgent we will be to get there.
No, the closer we get to ourselves.
You say assuming we get to ourselves.
No,
the closer.
The closer we get to ourselves.
The closer, okay, yes, the closer we get to ourselves. But how far are you from yourself now? So the language is inadequate, but I know what you mean. The closer we get to the eradication of ego.
Right. I just wish it's like, you know, because nobody has to teach me to take a breath. I wish.
No.
Will also be as automatic as, you know, me gulping for air.
Yeah. And nobody needs to take. So the basic, we are born with these things. As soon as we are born, we start breathing, or we get a smack and we start breathing. Then what's the first thing we want? We go for a mother's breast to feed. So all these things, it's just born. It's just inherent in us as ego. But as ego, we take ourselves to a body. As body, we want air, we want water, we want food, we want all these things. So we don't need any training.
So why do I need training to know myself? It just seems like it needs so much training.
But it's not training. What we need is practice to wean ourselves off our desire and attachment for other things. There's nothing, Bhagavan often used to say, jnana is not something new to gain. We're not going to suddenly gain jnana. What we need to get rid of is the ajnana. Ajnana is nothing but ego. And that ajnana is sustained by our desires and attachments. So now we've got to wean ourselves off those desires and attachments. So that is why the practice is necessary, the process of weaning.
Repeated, persistent practice.
Yes, absolutely. That is the only way.
So Deepthi says palaha palaha, like practice and practice, like Bhavan says in
Yes, yes. And as he says in his translation, in I think in Bhagavad Gita Saram, he translates, I think it's chapter 6, verse 25, if I remember correctly, of the Bhagavad Gita, which begins, Sane Sane. Sane Sane means slowly, slowly, gently, gently, gradually, gradually. In Tamil, he translated it as Mella Mella. So we have to go gently, gently, gradually, gradually. But persistently.
That's right.